Welcome to the world united. Welcome to the world united.
Yes. So everyone, welcome back to our next session. And we just came out of this most wonderful and beautiful space. The divine love is pouring us. We weaved together and touching the journey of the heart and weaving into the journey together with dolphins and whales and tuning deep into the heart of beloved Mother Earth and open and expanding into the universal consciousness of the One, that we are all here to serve in different ways and coming together in this beautiful shared group feeling space in the multi-dimensional frequencies and consciousness that is rippling out. And as we ended the last session, also Fia, that is now our upcoming speaker, came in. So it's such a beautiful weaving and how everything is weaved in and out. So I want to welcome you all back into this second session where we're going to meet other beautiful sisters that is going to share their uniqueness, their unique frequency and their love with you. And it's so wonderful being here and taking part and coming together in this way. So I'm very honored to introduce you to our first speaker here, our first sister that's going to share this space with us. And I'm very, very curious. And she's going to talk about different passages of life and talk about death and birth. And I know you more will introduce yourself. So welcome so much, beloved sister Jenny. Welcome to this space, just sharing whatever comes that you want to share with the world today. Welcome, sister.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very grateful to be here. My name is Jenny. I live in southern Sweden. And I was invited to speak here almost a year ago, and was a bit hesitant at first, but I knew from the start that if I was going to speak here, I wanted to touch the subject of death and dying and how it affects us as human beings, or maybe more accurately, how the denial of death in society today affects us and our human experience. So my aim here today is to leave you hopeful and maybe a little bit curious, rather than that it feels scary in any way or gloomy or doomy. I've been observing a lot because I've been doing shamanic practices for over 20 years now, and it's in shamanic practices, death is always present. You know, it's a part of life. It's part of the cycle, the natural cycle in nature and within us. So for me, it's always been, I wouldn't say I'm of course not totally liberated from fear of death, but I've always been a little bit curious and wanted to know more. So when I've been observing society today, it's like, you know, I see that we focus a lot on what separates us. Like we can talk about nationalities or the color of our skin or our age or gender. There's so many things that separates us. And I would say the one thing that actually unifies us, everyone on this planet, is the fact that at some point we will all stand face to face with death, our own death, or maybe the death of a close one. And also that death comes in so many costumes and so many different stages of our life that we are not really aware of. And I've also seen that we as humans are so good at learning. We want to learn so many things. We go to workshops to learn about maybe gardening or building a house or how to fix a car. And also when we're about to have children, we go to workshops learning to give birth in the best possible way, or how we can learn how to be parents. But there are basically no workshops around death, and how do we handle the fact that we're all going to die, and how can we teach ourselves about this to make it or turn it into a more natural thing rather than something terrifying or something that we see as the end of the road or a definite end. So when I've been really, been starting slowly to open talks about death with people around me, I often get the reply that I don't want to talk about that. I want to focus on living. Now I'm alive. I want to be alive. And then I usually ask the question, well, are we living to our fullest potential if we deny what is inevitable? And then I often don't get a reply, because that's like, going into very uncomfortable grounds. And it's uncomfortable for a reason. We fear it because we don't know about it, and we fear it because it's linked to grief, and always usually linked to loss of something. So it's very natural, but we're onto something here that we need to slowly get closer to the subject of death and dying and what it really is. So for me, I got acquainted with death in a very special way, and it comes different ways to all of us, of course. But for me, I stepped into motherhood about 4 years ago, and that threw me into what is clinically called a postnatal depression. But for me, I would say it was a big transition or a very deep upgrade of some kind that threw me into a total pitch black darkness where everything was questioned. I had to question everything I was, everything I am, everything I wanted to be. And I think we could call this the dark night of the soul. It's where you come to a point in the human life where you don't know anything, the compass is lost. And I could really see here when I one day I really felt like I've hit rock bottom. And rock bottom is the interspace between life and death. And I can see this is a similar place that we touch when we, for example, journey with plant medicines and such. You're beyond the place of death, or in between life and death. And in this space, it's very fertile ground, because you can really do some heavy work here and some very important work for the rest of your life. And for me, I want to do a little very quick out to permaculture. For those of you who are aware of permaculture, there's something in permaculture that is called edge. And edge is an area in the environment that is in between, like, for example, the edge is in between water and forest. So on that like border in between, it's going to be the most fertile soil. So everything grows like explosively, and you don't really have to do anything. And in this area, for us as humans, when we are there, like in between life and death, there is super fertile ground for learning and for changing things in your life. So I realized when I was there in the edge, because I was standing face to face with death, and I had to make a choice. Would I go back to living, or would I start dying? And in that very deep darkness, of course, I could really feel the gratitude. Wow, I get the choice. I'm standing here with the choice to live or die. Not everyone gets this choice. And from there, choosing life, I could slowly start spiraling up towards the light again. Very shortly after this, I would say within 6 months from this turning point, my grandmother, then 99 years old and 8 months, we were all rooting for her to go to her hundreds, but she was done. She wanted to leave this earthly life. So I had the luxury to sit with her for her few last days and just observe what was happening with her, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And of course, there are so many feelings that come up when somebody dear and near passes away. It's grief, it's fear. But for me, it's also mostly like a huge humbleness and gratefulness for just being there with her in this moment. And then I realized I wasn't scared. I wasn't scared to meet her where she was. I could be a companion without projecting too much fear on her. But I could also see that many relatives thought it was horrendous, and it was almost traumatizing to the point that they couldn't stay with her. And that's when I realized that there are things that I could do here. So after she passed away, I kind of, it felt like I took on a new path, and I started to look around for what can I do here to start spreading the word or start helping out with this big transition of being death. And there are no such things in Sweden where you can really learn about this unless you work within palliative care, for example. So I find a course based in the United States to an end-of-life doula. It's really about accompany the dying and the relatives of the dying. So I did this course, and I got to learn so much in quite a short time, what I had no idea about. And I realized that everything that happened to my grandmother physically was all natural. And I wish I would have known that when I was sitting by her side, because then I could have been, more of help to myself, but also to my relatives. And after this, it's been my journey of finding ways on how to help people to have the courage to get a little bit closer to death and dying. And I wanted to find a way that is easy for anyone. You don't have to know anything about shamanism. You don't have to have any spiritual training at all, but something that really can unify us in having the courage to do this. So what I realized that the key here is to repair the huge disconnect that we have today between human and nature, the cycles in nature and the cycles within ourselves. And how can we do that in the best possible way? So go out in nature, observe, take some time. And when I say observe, I don't mean look or watch with judgment. Observing is more a way of just observing without judgment, see what is happening. Like this time of the year, just pick a tree close to you. Maybe you have in your garden, or maybe you pass a tree on the way to your work, and just observe it. What's happening? What are the changes? And try to really embrace those changes without judging them. And that's like I feel a very soft and easy way to slowly get closer to the cycles, the natural cycles of aging and then suddenly dying. Because what we see in nature all the time, especially here in Sweden, where we have 4 seasons, it's very prominent, it's very clear that death is always present. And what if we can start to accept that cycle within ourselves? If we start with nature and then we take it in closer to ourselves, and maybe we can start to accept that we are also in a cycle and that we also are aging. And that is something natural and something very beautiful. I think everyone would, find it ridiculous if we went out now in autumn time and started to paint all the yellow leaves green to make summer stay longer. That would be crazy. But yet that is exactly what we're doing to ourselves all the time. We try to paint over, we try to distract ourselves from the fact that we have a natural cycle going. So I'm going to end this with just a few words about fear and grief, because that's, of course, 2 of the emotions that are totally natural to the human experience, but they're also very hard to handle and hard to accept. And I think those are 2 of the reasons that we don't accept death in the way we should do. So, just remind ourselves that grief is really a receipt of love, of great love. If we wouldn't grieve something, we wouldn't have loved it so much. And just try to embrace that and bring it to our hearts, because this is really about being in the heart space all the time, having the courage to stay there and feel what is there. And when we do that, it turns to something way less scary. You know, we let the demons come out of the closet and just hold them rather than to, you know, put another lock on that closet. So yeah, I mean, this is a work in progress, and this is of course something that you won't succeed with in a few days or even a year. You know, it's very much a life journey to be in acceptance of death and dying. And I hope that my little talk here today can inspire you to have the courage to go on this journey. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, beautiful sister Jenny, for sharing this very important topic. And I feel really, you know, the sacredness of death and the importance of valuing it and honoring it. And thank you for being in service for this and opening up the consciousness and the intimacy with death. I feel it's very important. So thank you so much.
Thank you,
sister.